Oops. Yes, the technology is...
It's slippery slope.
Here, put it somewhere. Okay, hold on to that.
Anyway,
Nishith
you.
is India's leading technology lawyer. His law firm, Nishith Desai Associates, which is headquartered in Mumbai, is the premier firm that helps global firms enter the Indian market and understand what's happening with technology in India. They have offices in Palo Alto, in New York, in Munich, and in Singapore. Nishith has been here for the entire conference with some of his colleagues. To be honest, another thing I would fault myself in this conference for is it's not international enough. So the fact that we have Nishith is helpful, but we would love to have more representatives from around the world. So what we're going to do, though, here is talk a little bit about his work and India and how it differs from what we know and what we can expect from it. And I've asked Nishith to just start out by give a few reflections of what he's heard here and what he's doing and what we ought to know about India.
I think India is...
You got to hold this up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought...
Yeah, it doesn't work.
The technology doesn't work at last minute, you know. Anyway, so good morning. And I think we are at the cusp, we are at the runway, I would say, on that becoming kind of a technology powerhouse in many ways.
India, yeah.
And there are a number of reasons for that. I think, of course, genetically also, civilization has been there for a long time. So it's a cycle we went through, downturn cycle. Now they are going on the upside. And second thing, as you even know, that zero was invented in India, by the way, by Aryabhatta. He's a mathematician. And I think if zero would not have been invented, half of the digital world would not have been there because 0 and 1, right? So, so we contribute, we have contributed 0 to the world, but at the same time it comprises half the thing. So I think we are looking at a number of things. One of the interesting things is that India is a large market, but at the same time, so the scalability is very high. And the cost of failure is low. So that allows you to experiment with a lot of things. Today, most of the R happens in the West here, and D happens in India. It is just beginning to happen. I think this is what I'm looking at. A lot of entrepreneurship, a lot of new ideas are coming up. But in every system, you start with Me Too companies. Me Too in the context of, don't get me wrong.
No. Copycat companies.
Yeah. And then you start becoming innovator and stuff like that. So we'll look at next 8-10 years to, now we'll be on the cusp. India is trying to develop itself into an entrepreneurial economy because job creation is going to be challenged for India. Manufacturing is not that much a forte for India, just like China. It's going to be more of a service economy, just like the US. And there's so much to do in that. And even if you look at pharma, biotech, the patient pool available in India, maybe if you're one person to do clinical trial here, you might get 50. Even doctors do excellent job because when they are students, they actually work and experiment on the real dead bodies, not artificial. Because the dead bodies are available in ample number. Whether we like it or not, it's a fact. Because so many bodies which are found, they are poor people, they don't have, and they're in the hospital. So students really get a real experience when they are.
Hopefully that opportunity will diminish with time, yes.
Oh, of course. And I think, but the experience that is built up, I think, will be very helpful. And we see that this is, and again, as you know, with China, US, the political, economic relations that are happening, I think India has some opportunity to play a very important role, and we can talk about it if separately. But I think India, another advantage we have is that we have freedom of speech and expression. It's a democracy. And that is why, we are able to express ourselves fully. If anybody would ask me who runs the country, is it the government? I would say probably yes, but really speaking, it's the judiciary. So whether it's pollution, whether it is privacy, whether it is LGBT issues, all these have been addressed by Supreme Court of India. And very modern, dynamic view that has been taken by the court in all this regard. They are not thinking backwards. They are thinking forward. So all these things, India has been liberated in many ways. And that is what gives me a lot of hope that India has an opportunity and potential to become some kind of a tech powerhouse.
Well, you heard John Chambers say on stage on Sunday that he sees India ultimately being an even bigger opportunity than China, maybe getting its act together better in time. Does that make any sense to you, or is it, I mean, China has the advantages of command and control. It has a tremendous technological head start, so to speak, in many areas. Do you, when you see the two countries competing and in many ways cooperating, how do you see that relationship evolving, and how do you see India's capabilities vis-a-vis China's?
I think it's simple as this, that command and control, system works for a shorter period of time, and especially more so with the revolution in the digital area. Aspirations of people go up. So it is not easy to contain the discontent in that sense. So at some point in time, if there are infirmities in the Chinese system, they would begin to show up. Already to some extent it is happening. Even in Hong Kong you can see, and people in China would also learn about what people are doing in Hong Kong. Nobody ever thought that this kind of protest would happen in Hong Kong, right? Whereas in India, we see this every day. So we are so used to think, okay, it's happening, it's okay, bye, pass by. You can shout anything against the Prime Minister, President on the road, and say, don't, if you want to shout, go on the side, let my car move forward, That's a kind of often reaction, we see that. So it's a very different society, and there are no absolutes in the world. There are some advantages of perhaps command and control, so they can drive the way they want to. But I think the democracy allows us to express on a timely basis if things are not going right. And the press is very, very free in India. In fact, it is half the time anti-establishment. And that is the beauty of India. So, the court system, the problem with court system is that settle with millions of cases. So it takes long time and delays and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, when the important issues, Supreme Court would take them out of turn and address them.
So you said you wanted to talk about the future of democracy, but so that's a way of expressing optimism about democracy. I mean, it is interesting about India and the United States. We essentially come from the same legal genetic stock, so to speak, right? I mean, we both were created our systems around a British model. And so there are things that Americans can understand about India. But so you really don't worry about democracy's future in India at the macro level?
Well, see, whether worried or concerned, I think there are two slightly different issues. I'm concerned about the democracy, the way in which it evolves on a global basis, not just India. And this is my pet project, that even 20, 30 years' time, we can change the entire model of democracy. First of all, we need to define what do we mean by democracy. Is it rule of majority? And does it happen that way? We have members of parliament, senators, they have power of attorney to vote on our behalf for 5 years, and you cannot do anything in the interim. Even if majority of his constituency believes in something, he will go and vote other way. So you don't have control. I think we need to give control back to, and it's my favorite subject, because I think technology is the best instrument to disintermediate. So can we have a model, a new model? Original model for democracy, or the concept began to happen in 500 BC with Socrates and Plato and Aristotle and people like that. And then it was Athenian style democracy. Then it was, I think, 2,000 years ago. And in 930, country called Iceland at first representative of democracy. And that's where it began to happen, Now 1,100 years have gone by. We all sit together and find out we have to change the business model, Because once you give this kind of power of attorney, you have no control. So in 5 years' time, if we can have a technology whereby you can vote on the phone, and phone can tell you you're in a secured environment, nobody's putting gun on you, you're stress-free and stuff like that, you can vote on any issue that you want to. Now, maybe you cannot vote on hundreds of issues because you don't have time, but at the same time, on few things that you want to vote, you can take back your power at that point of time, what you often call liquid democracy. And that is the system we'll have to go. We'll have to give power back to the people. I believe individual sovereignty will, over a period of time, override the state sovereignty. I also am not a great believer in the theory of state, if you ask me. But a nation is slightly different. New nations will evolve just as old ones happen around the river banks and these communities happen on river banks and then in highways, and now we'll have internet highways. So new countries may be formed. I believe 2,000 nations may be in the coming up in the next century. So these are some of the esoteric things. But the reason I'm telling is that, today it is going to be very different environment in next 5, 10, 15 years. And we need to remodel the democracy. A lot of diseases have gone into the whole system. And how can we use technology to change the world for the better? And democracy fundamentally is a good thing. But if those ages that have been rough in some years, I think we have to work together. I'll be very happy to.
So, well, one of the things that's certainly pertinent to this question is what we've talked about so much on this stage about the tech platforms and the speech problems that have emerged and how that has, in many people's opinion, distorted democracy. Does that worry you in the Indian context?
Well, in a way, yes. In a way, no. Because I'm an eternal optimist. So, we can. But it is for us to find some major solutions on a timely basis. And if we do that, I think it's not so much worrying. One of the most important things that worries me is that yesterday there was a presentation on killer weapons.
I'm just going to put this down because it doesn't look good for the video.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Keep going.
I'm loud anyway.
Oh.
So,
very nicely dressed, so go ahead.
But I believe that some of those things which really worry me, that we have to come together to see how technology is used for the good and not for the bad. And as I was mentioning, that even I hope that we will have parliament in the cloud. We don't need this heavy expenditure on the physical infrastructure and all those kind of things. Can we not create parliament in the cloud? What is the job of parliament? To develop laws. And in every law, there are three parts, First part is definition, second is operational, and third part is penalties and prosecution. 1/3 of the job is already done by Wikipedia. Can we not do crowdsourcing of the meanings of the words or whatever you use in the law? Similarly, operational thing, which issue should go to parliament? Today, it's all perception-based. Member of parliament or senator or somebody would take lead and go and introduce a legislation. It should be data-driven. What is more important to public is often not known to the intermediary, the MP, So we can have a system whereby, we use big data or other kind of thing and find out what are the true priorities of the people rather than going by perception. So there are a lot of things that we can do, and I think you all are most influential people in the world, and we can work together something whereby we continue with the democracy and perhaps move towards what is called netocracy, if you want to use that word. We have to be on the top of the thing, because the speed at which the things are happening, if we are not agile, I think it can derail us.
Well, it's satisfying to have a little of that kind of optimism on this stage. I think we've somewhat lacked it up until now, so thank you. But I also want to, and by the way, if anybody has questions, I want to ask one more thing, but I'd love to hear from you all. When you say we'll see possibly 2,000 countries, is that a way, one of the things that came up in our breakfast just now is Jody, who had spoken on the stage on Sunday, was saying, she's a psychologist, sociologist, she does a lot of study of the ethics, but the basic human impulse is tribal, right?
Yeah.
And she uses that to help explain a lot of what we've seen with fake speech and its consequences, and that we should have known that if we had an interconnected world, people would connect with those like themselves and reinforce their views. Is that sort of another way of what you're saying, that these will be more tribally discrete entities, which always were there, but were, for whatever reason, colonialism, others, broken up by historical factors?
I think it is bound to happen. That's what is my feel. Because as you see, there is already a lot of breakups. Like from USSR, we had a number of countries come up. India had 14 states when we got independence. Today we have over 30, and still demand is there. Because aspirations of the people are rising, and therefore people would demand different kind of mechanism to address their problems. So as I mentioned, that theory of state will slowly give way to theory of nation to some extent. Nation is slightly different than the theory and the state, because geography is becoming slowly, slowly at least irrelevant in many ways. And, for hundreds of years, we fought so many wars, killed so many people to acquire territories. After acquiring territories, now what we do, we sell it to a company, and the shareholders of the company are my former enemies. So I'm still giving back. So what is the use of fighting? Because in the war, only companies win, not the countries, So I think what I assume is that the new nations will be built, as you said, tribal nations, let us put it in that sense, along the internet highway, rather than on the,
I'm glad you answered that. You've got a question over here. Please identify yourself.
Hi, my name is Bhushan Joshi. I'm with Ericsson. Nishit, great to have you on the stage, and someone from my hometown, Mumbai. So great to have you. Question for you. India is the largest population in the world now, maybe right behind China, or we're going to overtake them pretty soon. When it comes to sustainable development, the population that we have, can you talk about how this democracy 2.0 that you're thinking about and the population that India has, what is the path for sustainable development for India?
And should I, before you answer, I would note that Bhushan, me, and you all have our SDG pins on, which is the way to advocate sustainable development. So go ahead.
I think, let me put it in one word, if something is not sustainable, it will not sustain, number one. And therefore, everything you do has to have some kind of an impact. Even in the fund industry, I see, at one point of time, we had different asset classes, private equity fund, VC, these, that, and impact fund. Now, the situation is that every fund has to show impact. If you're not causing an impact, I think LPs are not willing to fund you. So, impact is going to be the thing. How you manage the impact is different. It's so long, so far we thought, okay, only social NGOs will cause impact. But now it's the private sector that has to take a lead. One theory on which one premise on which I'm working on is what is called private property for public good. And there's a lot of talk going around the world that 1% of the population owns 99% of the wealth of the country. So to me, owning a wealth is not per se an issue. How you use it, and that is where we need to put more emphasis. And we have to really think how the future is going to unfold. And of course, we have to really look to the future and work. Maybe I can spend a minute.
Yeah, just a minute. That's what we have, 1 minute. Okay.
How much? One? Okay. So, as a law firm, we are into advanced predictive legal practice. And what we try to do, we look to the new technologies, new social development, political development that would be happening over a period of the next 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And try to visualize what will be the future legal, regulatory, tax, and ethical issues that will be coming up. And we have to do that when you have proof of concept of a new technology, not when technology is already there and it's being either abused or, some other problems come up, then government reacts. So we should simultaneously, when proof of concept for any technology or product comes up, immediately we should see what are the kind of regulatory or even the self-managed ethics that would be required, and I think that is something that we can.
And I know you've done that with things like blockchain. You immediately put together teams to try to understand what it would mean if it were to expand, and
right.
et cetera. And I just want to say one thing, because I know you had slides which we don't have time for now, but among other things, Nishith in his firm has built a spectacular campus for conferences and other kinds of meetings in Mumbai. It really looks like a university campus with meeting houses. We have, there's a little bit of it, okay.
Yeah, it's
right
working.
there.
Technology works.
Looks
on
like
right
the White
time.
House from here.
So this is our campus in Mumbai, and all of you are welcome. This is called an imaginarium, like planetarium, aquarium, museum, just to imagine and dream the world, to change the world for the better. And so these are it's completely IoT driven, and I'm not going to walk you through all that, but this just gives you a very quick snapshot of what it is, and it is a private property for public good. So we don't rent out to anybody, but if you have a good purpose and good people behind, most welcome. We would love to collaborate with each one of you here and do something interesting, exciting. Let's change the world for the better, as I always say, and shape the world that we want to. Thank you.
So much. So glad that you were able to get time for that. Thank you.